But coming up, we have two players who also have a lot of packs and hopes behind them too. Neirea from Ukraine is going to be quite the fearsome opponent against Fr0zen. And I'm going to go ahead and just start welcome them. No time to waste. Let's meet our first player from Ukraine. Please welcome Neirea.
Neirea competed in 2 of the seasonal championships this year and wants to put a punctuation mark on it with a world championship.
His opponent, runner-up in the Winter Championship from the United States of America. Please welcome Fr0zen.
Fr0zen's lineup is considered one of the most impressive by the rest of the field.
Let's do this! Fr0zen versus Neirea.
I haven't prepared that much yet for him.
Neirea has the exact lineup that I target.
The most challenging is for me would be to win with Aggro Druid, I think.
I'm very favored, close to 60% versus his lineup.
Fr0zen versus Neirea. Ready, set, go!
Hello everybody and welcome back to the 2017 Hearthstone World Championship. We're about to get underway with Fr0zen versus Neirea. I'm TJ, joined by the Admiral. That's Admirable. How you doing?
Pretty good.
Oh yeah?
Last match was exciting.
Tell me about it.
Game 5 was a little bit of a blowout, I must say, but the rest of the series was pretty gosh darn good.
Yeah, pretty good. But you know, this one is big in many ways, and one of those, well, I was going to say, is the control mage, and that's one of the things that Fr0zen brought that not a lot of other players did. We saw Sinto earlier today play it. It was one of the unique decks that he brought as well, but Neirea's actually going to go and ban that away and leave up the Cube Warlock, which is pretty bold considering that the Cube Warlock also has good matchups against his deck. This is a rough situation for Neirea.
Well, that's what makes the matchup favored for Fr0zen in this instance, is that he's got 2 very strong decks against the standard lineup that a lot of players chose to bring. I think from Neirea's perspective, he can justify the Cube Warlock ban largely because the fact that there's the Carnivorous Cubes and the Doom Guards inside that deck. So his aggressive pushes won't always be stopped by a Possessed Lackey. Sometimes Fr0zen will find himself getting a Doom Guard, or maybe just having a cluttered hand full of 5-cost and higher cards. And in that kind of situation, Neirea can get an aggressive push going. But we're starting off with the classic matchup, the Highlander Priest versus Tempo Rogue from Neirea. And it's really important for Neirea, I think, to get some pressure on board and really clock the life total of Fr0zen. I think throughout this tournament, we've seen players fail to do that, and it's come up quite costly, I think.
And I love Neirea's list against Highlander Priest as a rogue list. He's got a double Elven Minstrel and double Cobalt Scalebane, and those are 2 of the cards that you want against Highlander Priest a lot of the times. Cobalt Scalebane provides pressure. It's also a dragon, so it's invulnerable to Dragonfire Potion. Elven Minstrel is just sort of a necessary tool to refill your hand with minions to keep up your pressure.
Yeah, and being stacked against Highlander Priest is something that you can see through a lot of Neirea's choices throughout his lineup. You know, you talked about the ones with Tempo Rogue, but also looking at his Aggro Druid deck, he's got a copy of Cobalt Scalebane and a Vicious Fledgling for added pressure. In his Highlander Priest deck, he's opted for Gadgets and Auctioneer over Lyra. And
That's
here,
right.
he's got a counterfeit coin to compound the pressure here. With this Edwin Van Cleave, I'm curious if he'd rather get the Dragon online sooner, or if he'd rather just make a big Edwin and put Fr0zen to the test.
Well, a lot of times, you know, there's 2 ways that a Highlander Priest deals with a big Edwin, and one is Shadow of Death, 2 is Silence. Earlier on in the game, later on, of course, you can have Psychic Scream or Shadow Reaper Anduin. So, you know, putting them on those 2 cards this early, it's usually better to do that early than it is to do it later on in the game, but Fr0zen does have the answer. He's got the Shadow of Death. And he's going for it.
Wow. I mean, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, if the Rogue God's bless you with his hand, you take the option and pay the price when it happens. But for Neirea, this is not the same start that he had against Fr0zen in Bahamas after the Shadow of Death comes out. You know, this is a rematch from there where Neirea was up 3-1 versus Fr0zen and eventually lost the match. That was best of 7 in Bahamas, and he couldn't quite close it out.
Yeah. I wonder if that's playing through their mind, that rematch. But I remember thinking back, and I saw Fr0zen smirk when he used that Shadow or Death, and that happened a lot back in the Bahamas when these 2 guys played against each other.
Well, it's not the most fantastic start for Neirea. His turn 4 is looking awfully grim.
Unless he picks up something, but even if he picks up Elven Minstrel, he's nothing to combo it with.
That's really the thing with Edwin, is like when you go all in on an Edwin push and it doesn't work, it is a giant, colossal impact that's made.
He gets a Circle of Healing, so he can get a couple additional cards since he rezzed the Northshire Cleric with his 1-mana potion.
It's the only minion he could res from that. I like the choice from Fr0zen to go for the 1 mana, utilize the Radiant Elemental. He's just had the early game to really put Neirea in check, and it's going to get compounded from here.
And Neirea does have a little bit of a board, so Cobalt's Gaming might be able to land that effect on something, but at any time, Fr0zen's got the ability to clear the board away with Dustbreaker. And just going to keep playing on Kurt, though. Draconid Operative. This is another reason why Fr0zen was saying earlier on that he's that he's favored in this matchup, or in this matchup overall against Neirea, is because Dragon Highlander Priest is just a little bit greedier than regular Highlander Priest.
Yeah. It also, like, the added pressure is so necessary versus matchups like Neirea's Rogue, where the pressure on board matters just about more than anything. So because of that, it's important to just have access to stuff like Twilight Drake, have access to Draconid Operative. Just helps you fight.
At last, a worthy disciple.
Second Kazakis.
And he took that potion awfully fast. Fr0zen is feeling good. Wow.
Deal 5 damage, give your minions 4 health. Look at that board.
That's about all she wrote.
Fr0zen seems like he's been on autopilot throughout the beginning of this matchup, but he's been playing on point. Fr0zen actually,
You see the look of Neirea, he just kind of looks up to the sky like,
Yeah.
is there any way out of this?
Probably not, and he realizes it and concedes. That means Fr0zen takes a quick game number 1.
And mind you, a lot of the tech choices from Neirea are a bit focused towards that matchup.
Yeah.
So the fact that Fr0zen was able to put together such a strong hand and win that quick early game, I think things could get tough for Neirea.
Yeah, definitely. You know, Fr0zen just was exuding confidence, not even just throughout the interview that we saw earlier, but throughout the week, talking to him talking to other players. He just feels like he next leveled the entire field here. And a lot of people are agreeing with him, but we'll have to see if that trend is going to continue. Fr0zen has a 1-0 lead. Will Neirea be able to bring this one back? We'll find out right after this. His only goal is to win the World Championship until he either wins or finds a new one.
That's after he wins.
Yeah, after he wins.
Yeah, I would say it's at the top. There's really no doubt that Neirea had such a great 2017. I mean, just his overall consistent performance has always been there throughout his Hearthstone career. I would say his 2016 hurt a little bit, but you're going to have those years if you are playing full-time Hearthstone as he's been. But it was just such a wonderful pickup for G2 to add him alongside RDU and Tice that are already on the team. And just, you look at the amount of titles and the amount of success they've had. The one big question standing for Neirea is, can he win on the big stage?
And he's won plenty of times before, but he's never taken home that big title, and that's the big question here. And we're going to get into it. Game number 2 is the Cube Warlock from Fr0zen. This is the full-blown Cube Warlock. This is with the Doomguard package. He's not guaranteed, of course, from that Possessed Lackey to get Void Lord like we've been seeing from some players throughout the tournament.
And I think that's the one reason why Neirea chose to ban the Control Mage from Fr0zen rather than ban out the Warlock is the fact that Possessed Lackey can summon a Doomguard and leave him vulnerable to lethal damage is a big factor for Neirea. He's considered all those options through and through, and Kaliseth is step number 1 to really helping that. You look at Fr0zen's hand, he's got Mortal Coil, he's got Defile, he's got ways to buff those spells up. He's got the Mistress on 1. So much of this deck is dedicated to early defense. And so for Neirea, he needs those extra buffs to get that pressure going because he should expect his minions to die quite often.
Yeah, and this matchup can get pretty tough for the Rogue. A lot of times you got to kill them before they get that Void Lord train rolling.
Oh, yeah.
Because as soon as you knock on the door that turn 10, you're looking at Blood River Gul'dan as a big way for them to just solidify themselves on the board. You know, even by turn 6, you need to have at least a decent place on the board because that's the Possessed Lackey Dark Pact turn. And that's when things can get a little bit sketchy.
Well, this game's going to get quite sketchy, I'd say, as well. I mean, Fr0zen's got a Doomsayer in hand. He's got a Spellstone he just drew that he can start buffing up. I'll be curious to see how he plays this because he can blow up just about everything in a row that Neirea's going to play.
Yeah, and this is why it feels like an uphill battle for Neirea's decks. Fr0zen, even in this I guess you could call it greedier Cube Warlock with Doom Guards instead of just the Void Lords. He still runs a Doomsayer. He still runs a Galaka Crawler and a Tainted Zealot, which are all helpful tools for dealing with early, more aggressive decks like Temple Rogue or Aggro Druid, which Neirea has in his lineup.
And this is a really cool move that I think Fr0zen's made here, delaying the Doomsayer. Turn 4 for Rogue is typically fairly weak, and even in the instance where Neirea has Sarnak Chain Gang, he's going to be able to Mortal Coil off the SI7 agent if it trades, and then set the Doom Guard as well. So it occupies some time for Neirea on that turn 5 and just starts building towards the big Defile turns, the big swing turns with Possessed Lackey. And that's really a problem for Neirea in the long term. It also helps him draw cards, just figure out what he wants his game plan to be, and has a nice answer to Corridor Creeper since the trades have been going on. The problem I'm seeing for Neirea right now, though, is just his heavy hand. You know, Edwin wants to be coupled to something. Minstrel wants to be coupled to something. So does Vilespine, and so does Bone Mare. So if he runs out of pressure, it's probably not coming back.
It's weird to say, but Firefly is probably the best draw for Neirea at this point. Allows him to just keep getting those combos along.
Thinking Swashbuckler, thinking Firefly.
Yeah. One thing to note about Neirea's list is he does only have one copy of Swashbuckler in the list, which is not a card that a lot of players tend to cut. But with double South Sea deckhand and a single South Sea captain, he feels like he's able to get patches reliably enough.
And this play right here from Fr0zen is one of the reasons you've been seeing a lot of Spellbreakers make their way into aggro rogue list, is they get Possessed Lackey coined against them, and there's not really much of an answer. In the open deck format, Fr0zen has been able to plan to do this in the matchup, and so he could play it without fear, knowing that Neirea does not have access to silence.
And there's a lot of math going on right here. Neirea is trying to best play around and Defile while also trying to best make sure that he has the best chances against whatever's going to come out from this Possessed Lackey. Does he attack face first and then just deal with the Void Lord straight up? Does he attack with one of his minions, make his Void Breaker to Defile, but then have a way to answer Void Lord like he just did? There was a lot going on with that turn.
And now with the 1/3s behind, Fr0zen has to just simply evaluate. How often do I get Vilespine Slayer if I Doomsayer? Can I just trade the board out? He's got so many resources to work with, and I fear that Neirea is just going to get choked out of the game.
Yeah, Defile plus Doomsayer is the play that jumps out at me the most.
Drawing cards seems to be one of Fr0zen's priorities.
Yeah.
What's missing from this hand that isn't currently here? I'm looking at the list and I'm wondering, because it's been so good for him so far. All he has to do is buy time to the Blood Reaper cooldown, I think. I love Nemsy. Fr0zen's looking very focused as well. I think this might be the most focused I think I've ever seen Fr0zen in a match. You know, I think back to Bahamas, he had a couple moments where you would look at his play and you'd go, ooh, I don't know about that one.
Well, he makes a lot of weird plays. He kind of reminds me, which is funny because, you know, they share a similar path in Shtanudachi, who makes a lot of lines that players don't necessarily spot right away. And they were the two finalists from Winter. And watching their series, which was a best of 7 back then, was pretty intense. Because of the fact that you really just never know what they're going to do. You expect a play to come out, like, you know, my eyes were on Defile plus Doomsayer there to go into the next turn, but he just thinks that step ahead. He says, well, I don't really have a play to follow up Doomsayer, so let me draw a card to see if that play is going to get better. And then a Spellbreaker on a South Sea Captain to play on curve and to get a card out of his hand.
Yeah.
Those types of things are not plays that, you know, the majority of players would make, I don't think.
I was just having trouble keeping up with the speed that Shtanudachi was playing at in Winter. I mean, you blinked and his turn was over.
and then you blinked again and the tournament was over.
I noticed Neirea not playing the Edwin here would set up the absolute dream Defile for Fr0zen. So he foregoes it to look for a better spot. If he can keep something on board here, you know, maybe he gets a lower value Defile from Fr0zen, he gets to keep an extra card. If he doesn't get that Defile from Fr0zen, then it means he has a minion left over sometimes for Bone Mare.
But one of the things to also keep in mind is Fr0zen may be trying to force Neirea to think that he doesn't have a Defile. Or he could also just be trying to be greedy with his Defile, knowing that it'll always be in a pretty decent spot, especially the later turns that you go with. Tainted Zealot, there's really no really good way to play around it.
Yeah, that was actually, he said that's why he included it over Blood
Yeah.
Mage, was that the first effect of 2 damage, and then the second effect of 2 damage. If that killed 2 minions, it would then yield the 5th damage to kill corridor creepers, and that was a big target of Fr0zen's in this tournament. He's actually, I think he's the only player in the tournament who has not brought any corridor creepers throughout his lineup with Fr0zen.
Yeah.
Faceless Manipulator just to keep stalling time. It's been such a wise use of his tools. He's using the harder to use tools first so they can have these premium board sweeps if he needs it.
Yeah, Faceless Manipulator a lot of times is used in the slower matchups to make their turns more awkward. You can Faceless Manipulator a Carnivorous Cube that you would use to eat a Doomguard.
That's the dream.
That is the dream. And that, wrecks a lot of the slower control decks. But against a Tempo Rogue, you do have to play for tempo. You can't fall too far behind.
Yeah.
And this is exactly what he's trying to do by copying that over.
Well, those would have been good. I'd say a little bit earlier.
Maybe. But Neirea,
Pretty good spot for Neirea, though, I'd say.
yeah, he's still presenting a strong board. He's rolling into a Bone Mare turn. He also has Southsea Deckhand plus Bone Mare as a way to just deal instant damage and get immediate value.
So this also requires a lot of attention for Fr0zen if he wants to clear this board. Like, I actually, with this particular hand, I'm not sure he can do it.
Well, he's got Tainted Zealot Defile. Just attacking with the Spellbreaker, Tainted Zealot Defile clears. I don't know. You would miss the last tick.
He would have to use his Spellstone to do it. He would Spellstone on the Edwin, run the Spellbreaker into the 4/5, and then Defile afterwards. So it looks like it's the Kobold and Spellstone looks like it's where he's aiming, but gosh, this was a great setup from Neirea. He tried to make the turn as awkward as possible for Fr0zen, and every single step of the way threatening Bone Mare. And since Fr0zen didn't see Bone Mare last turn, he may believe that Neirea just doesn't have it. The Minstrel could change things, though. There we go. This might be the first breakaway that Neirea's got in the whole game.
But he hasn't chipped away much so far. Fr0zen still at a very healthy 29 health.
Notice, though, that Fr0zen doesn't have a hard removal in his hand. He just used this 7 damage Spellstone. So I think this is Neirea's opportunity. If he's gonna get something going, this is the turn.
I mean, Fr0zen, with running this version of the Warlock, doesn't have too much hard removal. He does not have Siphon Souls. He does not have Twisting Nether. His removal is basically Hellfire and Defile. That's about it. And of course, as you just saw, the Spellstone.
Neirea, it looks like he's aiming with this Southsea Deckhand too. Wipe out the Spellbreaker, wipe out the 2/1. Say deal with this.
Yeah, this is about as good as he can play around Defile by keeping the small minions off the board and keeping the health on his minions that are on the board rather high.
Side effects? No. Only a fool rejects the Lich King.
It's going to clear a lot off the board, but that Doomsayer can still be cleared. At the very least, though, it's a 7 health heal.
This is a good reload from Neirea, though. I mean, he just saw a lot from Fr0zen used. The big problem that I think Neirea runs into is that even if he handles the Void Lord well, then he's staring down Blood Reaper
Gul'dan, which brings back 2 Void Lords. Well, actually,
not necessarily.
There's a chance that there could only be 1 Void Lord, because at that point, if Neirea does clear off all of the Void Walkers or has something to trade them in, there'll be 6 Void Walkers.
This is the all-in turn, though.
2 Void Lords in the pool.
So you hold the Vile Spine Slayer for anticipation of Void Lord in this spot.
Yeah.
You hope that Fr0zen doesn't have a way to clear out your board. You're looking at Hellfire being the real big hit that he would take. And you're hoping he doesn't have Void Lord. But if he does, you have Vile Spine Slayer. Is this enough to push through?
Scalebane's a great card to add to a board full of little stuff.
If he had not played the Felguard, he would have 3 less damage this turn, but he would be able to get the Scalebane down
That's
off the combo.
That actually seems pretty enticing.
Of course, there's no way to know he's drawing Scalebane next turn.
You gotta trust in the heart of the card, Jack.
I think it's also quite important here for Neirea to be using the Tar Creeper to attack, so that way he can try and mitigate, you know, maybe another Defile later on. Let's leave him with a board with 2 health, 4 health, 5, and 6, so that key 3 is missing.
All right, well, this is the big test. Is Blood Reaver Gul'dan enough?
2 Void Lords is what Fr0zen wants to see, but
Yeah, a shake of the head from Neirea.
1 Void Lord. I mean, that's still a lot of health.
That's a lot of health, but that's a pretty big deal.
2 things to add to the board as well with the Sarnet Chain Gang pickup. So now Neirea's just got to figure out the most efficient way to bust through this Void Lord and the remaining Void Walkers afterwards.
Well, only 1 Void Walker spawns from this Void Lord.
There's still 7 more on
There's
board
7 more,
afterwards.
but they're...
Have you played against Spreading Plague, TJ?
This is a much tougher Spreading Plague to get done, and it's less health.
And it's still good.
Spreading Void. But the thing is that he doesn't have to weaken his minions with the 3 damage Void. He can just soften them up with the 1 damage Void Walkers. That's actually a big deal. A lot of times, Warlocks survive with pretty little health. It's a pretty close matchup when it comes down to it. And now Fr0zen with both Doom Guards in his hand, Possessed Lackey plus Darkback, all of a sudden it doesn't pull anything. And the Doom Guard plus Carnivorous Cube is much harder to use. Really the only thing he can do in his hand next turn is Spellstone Doom Guard, but playing a Doom Guard onto this board and discarding some of the stuff that's in your hand, this is tough.
I'm quite surprised Neirea goes to the Chain Gang over Oh my. That is
That's full clear. You attack one of the Void Walkers into the Felguard. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, that's really bad news for Neirea.
That's a full clear.
I mean, Fr0zen's down to 7 cards in the deck, and then he has yet to draw a Hellfire either, so there's 2 more Hellfires in here that would put a big hurt on Neirea's board as well. Run the Void Walkers into the Chain Gang, Hellfire, eat the Corridor Creeper. There's still some pressure on the opposing side of the board, but he's at 20.
My hunger.
Neirea's just saying, please dodge the Defile. But nope.
I must
Yep.
Yep.
There's one of the Doom Guards, but a Cube and a Dark Pact stay.
Yeah, Cube is the one that he wanted to see.
Ooh.
Well, actually, either of them was what he wanted to see. But that's just,
yeah, it's
that's just
lethal.
game. Yep. Cube plus the Dark Pact will be enough.
I was even looking at Neirea's health.
He's at 9. He got quite low early on, but that means Fr0zen takes game number 2. Neirea had a lot of pressure at the end, but wasn't able to overcome Blood Reaver Gul'dan.
And that 2-0 lead is going to be really tough to break through. However, I have been saying it throughout this tournament, and I still will say it. With Jade Druid remaining, I think Fr0zen is still at a bit of disadvantage, although his Jade Druid has a twist.
Jade Druid does have a twist. It's the Violet Teacher with Oaken Summons, Jade Druid. So a little bit of an interesting dynamic with the deck as opposed to the Ironwood Golem. It has more aggressive tools. And taking a look at what's happening around the rest of the tavern here at the Hearthstone World Championship. Some Hearthstone Battleship taking place. Someone's jamming some games at the same time, though.
Oh, look who's there.
That looks a lot like a previous world champion to me, Admirable.
Yeah, I believe Firebat is his name. Sunk my fiery bat, you take a point.
All right, well, we'll see if Neirea can come back in this 2-0 deficit. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the Hearthstone World Championship. You just heard Fr0zen say that he played Hearthstone for 36 hours straight.
That's not how a day works, is it?
No, it's not. But he's dedicated to his craft, man. He is dedicated. Right now, he's up 2-0 against Neirea. And he brought an interesting lineup. You know, a lot of players said that after speaking with Fr0zen, after looking at all 16 lineups in a vacuum, they thought that Fr0zen was the one who thought one step ahead of everybody else in the field.
Yeah, Neirea actually had tweeted out that he was working on some stuff for Worlds. His actual quote was working on interesting stuff for Worlds, but couldn't manage to optimize it well enough. So submitted regular decks that I had ready for 2 weeks. Pretty disappointed in myself. That was an actual quote from him on his Twitter. And the first person he's got to play against is the guy in the field who everyone agrees went the next level and brought the best lineup. And when I say everyone, the players in the tournament is what I mean by that.
And Tice.
And Tice. Not Firebat, though.
Nope.
Keep it simple.
Bring the best decks. All right, well, let's get into it. It's going to be the Jade Druid from Fr0zen versus this Aggro Druid from Neirea. Now, we talked about it, but the Jade Druid from Fr0zen is a little bit different. Violet Teacher. It also runs Mark of the Lotus in that one spell slot. So it's sort of less defensive, but it uses offense as a defense, I guess you could say, because when you use Oaken Summons, you get the Violet Teacher, and then you can make a little bit of a bigger board with the Innervate, Mark of the Lotus, things like that, and that can fight against aggro as opposed to just one taunt.
Yeah, he's really brought a different angle of attack here, where rather than just having to rely on super late game, he wants to get it going a little bit earlier with Violet Teacher potential. Now, that can sometimes punish him in an effect where he doesn't have the late game potential that he would normally have, but it certainly can speed things up. And there, that Jasper Spellstone is a critical draw.
Whoa.
Whoa. I don't know about this one, TJ.
He could have Jasper Spellstone, Hero Power down the Vicious Fledgling, rolled into Violet Teacher, and then do stuff, but this way he gets the Violet Teacher on the board when it's not being contested by anything.
Right, but it's a Vicious Fledgling. I mean, this card is meant to punish the one time you can't kill it because your deck is slow on board presence.
Yeah, Fr0zen's like, this thing gets... Never win Fury.
This might kill him.
It's basically lethal
Not this
damage.
Turn, but that has to be the scariest minion in the game to not kill for a turn. When you're at 30.
Well, there is the chance that Neirea kills the Violet Teacher.
There's almost 0% chance, I think, that he kills this Violet Teacher.
It's scary. If he gets Wind Fury, maybe there's a chance he kills it.
Well, there's stealth.
There's no stealth.
I'm sorry. Why did I say stealth? The poisonous. So at the very least now, the
Stealth was stealth. Good one, Admirable.
Thanks, Tej. Neirea loads up and says, "You want to kill it now?" Wow, worked out beautifully.
He got rewarded. Took a risk.
This is a big reward for Fr0zen. If you think about it, though, the chances of him to get Stealth or Wind Fury is not the largest. And you have a follow-up if he misses both of those. And then Corridor Creeper gets drawn. So I think this is Neirea's big turn. I think he's got to move in here.
Yeah. But this Violet Teacher's got to die, because once you get to these later turns...
Is he killing it, really?
I think you have to.
All right.
Yeah.
I can respect that.
When you get to turn 5, all of a sudden he has a couple cheap spells. He draws Mark of the Lotus. He has a 4-cost spell plus Mark of the Lotus. You're in trouble.
2 branching paths to try to give Fr0zen some time, some extra cards.
Ooh, that's a...
Yikes.
Yeah. If he had drawn something that he could play next turn or something good, he probably would have gone for armor on the second one. But drawing that Ultimate Infestation meant that he needed to dig deeper in his deck. He also has the second branching paths to be able to gain armor in a pinch.
Well, Corridor Creeper is going to put a big hurt on that Jade Behemoth as well. This is going to be tough for Fr0zen still. He had no ramp in the early game. He had to use both Jasper Spellstones to try and buy time early on.
Well, he does have a ton of armor.
Oh, my.
Mark of the Lotus.
That might be all she wrote. Neirea is about to make a colossally big board.
He can push 11 damage this turn.
No Crypt Lord either. Spreading Plague very much on the front of his mind.
Yeah, Crypt Lord, that extra 2 damage, not really going to make a difference. His board is already pretty protected. And he's got more than enough damage for lethal next turn.
That one just probably goes face. What does that play around?
Swipe. Swipe plus Jasper Spellstone.
He doesn't have a
wouldn't
Jasper's
kill-
left.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's true.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see if Malfurion can get it done. Next turn, he could go Jade Blossom, Jade Idol, branching past double armor, and then into Ultimate Infestation, but I just don't think it's enough. Gains 12 next turn. And then gains 5 the following turn, so he can gain 17 over the next 2 turns, but... I mean, it's possible, but it's unlikely.
We've been seeing the unlikely happen quite a bit throughout this tournament.
Yeah, there's actually just going to be enough damage on the board. There's 16, 17 with the hero power. He can only go up to... Whoa. So Plague into Armor Up, or Plague into Kill a Minion.
I think that the Kill a Minion has a lot of upside here.
Well, if you go Kill a Minion, then you die to Savagery.
How? You have 4 guys in play.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Wow, look at this.
Yeah, I Kill a Minion. Because that's less damage in the long run. You gain 3 armor now, but you have another minion on the board that could deal recurring damage.
So now Neirea may be in the business of playing the rest of his minions. A second Spreading Plague, I just don't think he's going to beat.
And that one came off the top. He knows that.
Oh, he's stressed.
I mean, he's not pushing any damage through here. And but the thing about Fr0zen is, will he be able to muster up enough for a counter attack? The thing is, you can gain armor for days, but eventually this board that you're not killing, that you're just delaying, is going to kill you regardless.
That's really the issue, is that it's just delaying it. If he was making any real progress here, this might be okay, but I mean, Fr0zen, it's looking like he might need a second Spreading Plague to survive the next turn.
Yeah, but then again, it's about, can he mount a counterattack? Right now, his next Jade is a 2/2. He's only played a single Jade card so far this game, and you know, even Ultimate Infestation is not going to be enough in a few turns. The 12 armor is not even enough. Let's see, he can gain 15 armor this turn. There's plenty of damage, yeah. I think he's dead no matter what he does.
Well, it's not quite. He's not 100% dead.
I think he is 100% dead.
It's 15 on board. He gains 15 armor this turn. He live at 2. But you're just not making any progress. Like,
yeah, 16 damage on board.
That way.
So be alive at 1.
I wonder how different this game would have been if Fr0zen was able to hang on to that innervate at all. If he had gone for the Jasper onto the Vicious Fledgling. And then what does he even draw afterwards that can get him out of this?
Spreading Plague.
He's got. I mean, I don't even think he can get Ultimate Infestation next turn. I think he's got to draw
Spreading Plague.
Oh my.
Well,
I
Power of the Wild's going to do it.
Yep.
Neirea puts himself on the board, takes a win with the Aggro Druid. One step closer. And again, this is quite the opposite of what we saw from when these guys played in winter.
It's the opposite.
It was the other way around.
Neirea was on match point, and Fr0zen came back and won. Now, at Worlds here, Fr0zen was on match point, and Neirea's put a point on the board. And the Jade Druid, again, that's the deck that I'm worried about for most of the lineups that are out here. Most people had brought a lineup that was strong against Jade Druid.
But Neirea does have one of the matchups that Jade Druid is pretty much in the lineup for from Fr0zen, and that's the Highlander Priest. Jade Druid is considered to be quite a big counter to Highlander Priest. A lot of times they can armor out of range of some of their big burst combos later in the game. They can present enough of threats as the game progresses because they basically have no pressure and can Jade as they please. And even Fr0zen's deck by itself can put a lot of pressure early on in the game with the Violet features instead of the Ironwood Golems once it's summoned by the...
Sand can get good for Neirea awfully quick. And honestly, something that's important to note in this matchup is I don't think that Neirea has this emphasis of trying to kill Fr0zen as quickly as possible in the matchup. I think his major goal is to have one timing attack. So that way he lands like multiple corridor creepers in the same turn, or he has a spot where he gets multiple threats and then is threatening Bone Mare. Bone Mare is often a huge enough of a blow to Fr0zen that it's difficult for him to really recover from that situation. And so for Neirea, the fact that he's got this bit of a slow start, I don't think is the worst thing in the world. Fr0zen just used his second Jade Idol, which I guess doesn't really surprise me.
In this matchup, it doesn't surprise me. You almost never get to a point against Tempo Rogue where you need extra Jade Idols in your deck. A lot of times you just want bigger Jades, and getting that Jade Idol means bigger Jades. Now, if this was Highlander versus Highlander Priest, it'd be a much different story. Yeah. You play that second Jade Idol,
you're donezo.
You're donezo, unless you're killing them in a couple turns.
But these are the kinds of spots that Neirea was looking for now. Fr0zen has used quite a number of cards, and he's working on those 2 corridor creepers. So it's just a matter of biding his time, and look at the save on the backstab here as well. So vital to know that he's going to end up losing one of these 2/3s very likely anyway. Follow up with the dagger, use the Cobalt Scalebane, have the backstab for the Vile Spine Slayer. That was where he suffered last game.
Yeah.
The last Rogue game, that is.
Yep. Well, he's making things a little bit tougher for Neirea. Neirea went the last play in order to be able to dagger off the 3/3 that traded into one of his Serenade chain games. And
wise timing to disrupt.
Yeah, I think that's why Fr0zen went ahead and played the Mark of the Lotus for not as much value as he could have gained, like maybe coupled with Spreading Plague later, because he's playing a tempo matchup. So for him, it's about making his opponent's turns as awkward as possible and making the tempo harder to gain from the perspective of Neirea. It's
about the biggest threat that Neirea is going to hit from Fr0zen's deck. No Medivh shenanigans. Ultimate Infestation and Jades are about as big as it gets in this deck. Now up to 7 mana. We're still a couple turns off of seeing some big power plays, but this is that timing attack right here that I wanted to talk about. With Neirea having this much pressure to add to board, Spreading Plague looks a lot worse into these size minions. And I'm curious if he's ever in the business of shadow stepping this Edwin, making it as large as he can.
So many options.
Whoa. It's going in.
Jeepers.
Jeepers Creepers.
They got a lot Jeepers. 10-10 Edwin. Neirea just added 20 power to the board on his 6th turn.
1 turn.
A little bit nervous when they add 20 power to the board in 1 turn.
I'm tapping my foot too. For my foot, it plays double corridor creeper, Edwin, shadow step, Edwin. Add a Cobalt Scalebane to the mix, and Fr0zen is looking like he's going to be pretty dead pretty soon. Druid just does not deal well with this type of board. Yes, wide and small, but...
The big thing to note here was that Neirea's opening hand was close to nothing. It was 2 corridor creepers, a Saronite chain gang. Like, nothing happened in the early game. It was the timing of the pressure that made the difference.
There's a reason why corridor creeper has such a high win rate when kept in a lot of matchups in the opening hand is because of the fact that you're going to make that big swing turn, and there's very little decks that can deal with big swing turns like that. He will be able to get Ultimate Infestation out but
There's 27 points of power still
Yeah.
remaining on board after that.
well, double swipe plus the Jasper Spellstone actually has a ton of removal. Plus second spreading play that he can use to sort of soften up the board. He's definitely still in this.
I mean, Ultimate Infestation's a heck of a card.
I mean, he's trying to think if he puts the 1/1 into the 6/3 Vile Spine Slayer, double swipe on the Corridor Creepers. Look at him. Wait. Edwin Van. Yeah, if he puts into the Edwin, then double swipe plus the Jasper Spellstone should be enough to clear it off. I wonder if Neirea is even going to think to play around that much removal.
29 damage available for Neirea this turn. I mean, that doesn't really. Does that account for the Sarnate Chain Gang absorbing one of these attacks as well?
No. Yeah, it does actually. He can clear out both Corridor Creepers plus the Edwin.
This go on.
How does he clear the Edwin? We have to double swipe it, and the corridors are still alive.
The Jasper Spellstone.
Oh, you're right. It's buffed up even if you draw it after, too.
Yeah, it gets buffed up by the Ultimate Infestation. I just can't remember if it was procced before. Because he hasn't played another armor spell. It might still be at the 4 damage point. Because right now he's just played...
How many times is he hero powered? I don't remember. I knew there was something I wasn't tracking this game.
He can even just Spreading Plague to soften everything up, and I think that's
It's
going
got
to
to
be
be step 1, I think.
Yeah.
But that's still... I mean, this is heaps of damage he's facing down still.
Yeah. Got a lot of ways
It's
to
got to be
armor.
12 armor, right?
He's got enough cards. He can give his minions +1 attack, and that again softens them up. So he gives his minions +1 attack and gains the armor because he knows that he's not going to be dead if he doesn't gain the armor twice. And this way, double swipe's just going to be that much better because if these Corridor Creepers go in, all of a sudden they're at 2 health, which means double swipe is going to kill them, even if it's targeted at a bigger minion like the Edwin Meg.
This is a brilliant play.
And also, it sort of accounts for Bone Mare because he should have enough damage to be able to push through the Edwin too and make the swipe get through on that. But he's making it so that even through Bone Mare, he'll be able to double swipe the minion that gets the additional health.
I think Neirea knows what's up now, too. He looks at one attack and he's like, oh my, this is double swipe. What do I do?
Well, I don't think you do anything. At this point, from Neirea's perspective, you just have to make the best trades you can and just hope he doesn't have the removal to get through.
Is there anything, can he like attack and then maybe forego some of the attacks?
No, I don't think there's any way. Just got to go. That's a full clear. Swipe on the Bone Mare.
Neirea's shaking his head.
Yep, swipe on the Bone Mare.
How did this get stuffed?
This reminds me of the Defile turn from the Warlock game. One last push Neirea gives. Fr0zen just had the removal, and he gets to keep his 6/3 around because of the Greater Jasper Spellstone, and it is not looking good for Neirea.
Wow.
The patience from Fr0zen to go with the
Hang on there. That's a Patches with a Bone Mare.
He's got Malfurion. I mean, maybe he pushes through, but there's still a 6/3 on the back of this. And that Patches is going to go up to 6 health. So that Patches is going to die.
Is that Bone Mare maybe the captain then instead?
Maybe. Yeah, that's a good point. He actually went for that Bone Mare very quickly. And maybe he put it on the captain.
He
but
knows
it's
he's playing
supposed
the
to do damage.
captain. Like, the captain's, I mean, it's got to come out at this point.
Yeah. But making it more difficult with both swipes gone. Fr0zen does not have Wrath in the list. It's a card that's cut to make room for the Mark of the Lotus that goes along with the Vile Teacher.
I wonder.
So his removal is more limited. So if he Bone Mares the South Sea Captain, it would need to be a hero power or some kind of other minion damage, or the second Lesser Jasper Spellstone, which is the only other removal that Fr0zen has left in his deck.
Neirea's trying to go through it and see if he can remember a read or figure it out. He's going to secure his damage.
Yeah. Guess he realizes he needs the damage.
I mean, Fr0zen's still not out of the water yet. I mean, this would be a trade at the lead. Oh my.
I think he can probably even afford to Malfurion this turn to get it online. Well, one thing.
Well, hang on. So if he Malfurions and he runs into like Elven Minstrel into Bilespine or something, like is that too big of a problem? Like at this point, Fr0zen's the top decks are what he's got to account for from Neirea. And this is the hard part to remember. Did you remember what was left in Neirea's deck at this point?
He does have a lot of whips. Neirea does off the top. He's got a counterfeit coin in the list. He's got a backstab, which really doesn't do much. Swashbuckler, a lot of the times, is a whip. Tar Creeper is not a super aggressive card that he'd want in this position. And I think the big question for him here is it an Armor? Is you kill the South Sea Captain, or you Jade Blossom and get your trades rolling again to have something to contest the board on the backswing?
I like the dude.
Yeah, he's got to get these shades up eventually, because eventually, as we mentioned, he's got to have some kind of counterattack.
Oh, the worst draw in Neirea's deck. And I think that's the full recovery for Fr0zen.
Counterfeit Coin is a pretty powerful card in the right circumstances.
This is not
But
one of
right
them.
there, that's when you forget every time that it was good for you and regret putting it in your list.
Neirea's down to 11. Fr0zen's 1 point off lethal.
A tangled web.
Too risky to just go for it. Ultimate Infestation is face. Now, gonna go with the Bone Mare, play it safe, knows Neirea's out of resources. Fr0zen can maybe even put a read on that, because that last card was drawn but not played. And a Fleam Elemental was played over it,
That's
so
it.
it obviously wasn't a combo card.
I give up.
Neirea gonna fall to Fr0zen. He's gonna take the set 3-1 and move on.
Team Fr0zen coming through. A lot of supporters for Fr0zen, actually, here. But a well-played match and a unique lineup from Fr0zen. I think a lot of people love to see that. A player that goes against the grain, that thinks one step ahead of everybody else in the field and gets rewarded for it. Fr0zen is going to go on to face Surrender in the winner's match. That's going to be one to watch. And Neirea will go down to face Omega Zero in the elimination match. But for now, let's go ahead and hear what Fr0zen has to say after his victory with Dan on stage.
Fr0zen, a lot of people were hyping your lineup and your play, specifically because the mage. And then prior to the series, you found out Neirea banned your mage. What was your first reaction to that?
I think it was really expected, since the mage is basically the same build as the warlock, kind of similar matchup, except the mage has a better priest matchup. And I also thought that he probably thought that I would be practicing the mage a lot more and be less comfortable on it. So it was not unexpected at all.
All right, there's some crazy chess level thinking. You thought that he thought that you knew that it would be good, so he banned it, and you knew that the entire time, so he wasn't surprised, if you follow my drift. Let's talk a little bit about the expectations behind you. A lot of people are predicting you based off of the hype from the casters. Other pro players, when they're interviewed, are saying they're going to do well. Does that add pressure, or does that give you confidence?
I think I'm very confident for this tournament, especially. I really like, as I said before, how I built everything. And I think it really showed in this series that if I am able to play Priest and Warlock and nobody else is going to be able to play those two classes, I'll be in a good spot.
All right, well, Fr0zen had the foresight to make the meta read. Congratulations, he's winning, and he's going to move on to play in the winner's bracket, Group D. Please give a round of applause for Fr0zen. And with that, we're sending it back over to Raven and Sodal, the analyst desk.